Teachers of Reddit, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? I was the kid. Physics, 11th grade. The day prior to this day, my neighbor passed away and her son was a friend of mine and also in this class. Terribly long story, but it was a suicide by hanging and I was the one who found her. I had nightmares all night and skipped the first half of school the next day. When my physics teacher saw me later, she asked where I was that morning. Before I could explain, she said, "That friend was looking for you and concerned. He seemed more worried than he should have been and was a little upset about you not being there." The guy's mom died, but he still went to class and didn't tell anyone, but was worried about me. I couldn't tell her what had happened at that point, so I just said I overslept. I hope you get past the nightmares, or at least got help for it. Thank you. I did. I had a student whose father had died and had not done any homework or prep for the geography class. From what I heard, the teacher scolded him for not doing so, but the student didn't want to say anything. Presumably sensitive issue, so his best friend shouted at the teacher, "Don't you have any shame? His father died last night," and the teacher said, "I don't care." There was an audible gasp and I was in the next room. Needless to say, that teacher is no longer employed here. My sophomore year in high school, Dad died. I missed a week of school. When I got back, I tried to turn in my English assignment that was due the week I was out. Teacher wouldn't accept it, said it was late. I told her my father had just died and that's why I was out. She said, "I know. But it's still late." Went home, told my mother. The next day, the principal, my guidance counselor and the superintendent had all contacted my teacher to rip her a new one. She had to accept my assignment. She was salty about that the rest of the year. That's craziness. Teachers like that should not be teaching. I agree. She was punishing me for something I had no control over. It's not about the teaching or the education, it's about the power over so many young influential minds. If you're a teacher for the power trip, fuck off. She had to take her sister to school and drive her mom to rehab. She was always late to class because her mom just wanted to sleep in. Problem was, if the mom was late or did not go, she would have violated her probation and gone to prison. I never marked her late. If she missed anything important, she could come in at lunch or after school to make it up. You sound like an amazing teacher. Thanks for all that you do. In that story, it sounds even more like an amazing student. Takes care of her irresponsible mother, takes care of her sister, takes care of herself, manages to make up for anything important that she misses. Hats off to that student. Not disagreeing with you, of course, great students like that also need good teachers who support them. And it sounds very much like Op is one of them. She is the real hero here. I just listened and did what was best for her at the time. My auto teacher let me practice removing and adding the tires on his vehicle. The next morning, it was about 20 minutes into first period and no sign of him. He comes running into the classroom out of breath and his hair is all messed up. He points at me and says, "What is a torque wrench used for?" I respond with, "I don't know." He says, "I know you don't know." Turns out one of his tires came off while driving down the highway. Honesty, that's on him. You're an idiot if you don't check behind the student on something like that. I mean, there is that. Plus, he didn't check that the kid fully knew how to do the procedure before letting him do it solo and unsupervised. So he didn't check your work before he drove? That's on him. You're a student. I had my tire come off because someone over-tightened it with a torque wrench in the nuts? Or whatever, sheared clean through on all of them. Happened literally within minutes of getting off the interstate. If I had gone one exit further, it would have happened when I was going 70 with my kid in the car. I think what you're going for is that they stripped the threads. Not a student, but one of my teaching assistants when I ran a preschool in West Philly. Sorry I missed yesterday, my friend shot my mom. Naturally, I'm a little speechless. Oh no, it's okay, he was aiming for someone else. When I was a manager at a pizza place, one of the employees had the same excuse and attitude, except he was the one who got shot. He lived in North Philly though. It's cool. He said, "My bad." Well, okay then. "'Tis but a scratch, your arm's off." No, it isn't. Yes, it is. "'Tis but not." I was one of about 20 kids who were late to school. We showed up at the school office as a group, and when questioned why we were late, we said the school bus blew up. They questioned, so the engine blew up. The kids know, the whole bus, in flames. It blew up. There was much conference between the teachers, all of them thinking we embellished the story. Next thing you know, one of the admin staff has the news website open, very obvious image of an entire bus on fire with a bunch of kids in our school uniforms standing in front of it. Our late slip for class reads, "School bus blew up." If that happened, I would walk home. If you can walk. If I could walk 100 miles I'd walk 100 miles for you. But I would walk 500 miles, and I would walk 500 more. Told me he got pulled over by the cops for wobbly driving on his bike and they thought he was drunk. Turned out he was just dodging all the slugs on the street. Good man, watching out for the sluggies. They like to traverse the walkway in front of my house at night, so I always have to shine a flashlight so I don't step on them. When I was a kid I remember loving woodlice, because they looked like some weird creature from the dawn of life on Earth. Like little trilobites on something. I'd evidently read some overblown kid's fantasy novel that contained a similar expression about something grand, elves or whatever, I don't recall, because I declared myself friend to woodlice. My parents, understandably, thought this was hilariously silly, but I still use the title to myself now even though I'm 40, and I always help the stupid little shits over if I see one struggling on its back or otherwise failing to cope with walking on anything that isn't completely flat, which is their specialty. So that's me. Friend to woodlice. I'm 20 and had to look up woodlice. Still call them roly-polies to this day. Pill bugs. A guy in my college class missed class one day. The next day he came in with his eye covered up and medical paperwork in hand. Apparently he got pecked in the eye by a chicken. What is it with fucking chickens today? Don't kink shame. Reminds me of the old joke erotic is using a feather. Kinky is using the whole chicken. What is it with chickens fucking today? What is it with the chickens I'm fucking today? At least they won't talk. School sporting event. Kid on our team was late because someone stole his windshield wipers and it was snowing out. Kept having to pull over to the side of the road and wipe off his windshield. Wow, that's a real bastard that swiped his wipers on a snowy day. Yeah, well, he needed the wipers. He had a burglary to get to, in the snow. Swiper, no wiper swiping. Damn, fine, you beat me to it, fair and square. After 9/11, my small-town high school received bomb threats every week for 2 months, and they decided to make us attend school on a Saturday. Myself and about 5 others showed up for our classes, and every teacher said something like I can't wait for the excuses on Monday. Most of the excuses were something along the lines of family plans or whatnot, but one kid was made read his dad's note aloud to the class because our first period teacher thought it was hilarious. In the most down south accent you can imagine, it went something like my son ain't too smart, but he knows you ain't supposed to get punished for someone else being a dumbass. Bought him a 6-pack, so he was drunk. Y'all can FCK off. I wish we had smartphones to record back then so I could share it. Is this Southeast Texas? Yes? I'm not the teacher, but we were told that he had a paramedic student who on their way to write their final exam rolled their car into a creek, picked up whatever books they had out of their car and ran the rest of the way to class. Obviously got there late and in tears. You better believe they had a different exam date. I missed my SAT once because the school bus got stuck in the ice. It was a residential school, so they didn't take snow days. My classmate was late for one of the final exams because he got held up by the police who decided not to give him a ticket. None of us believed him, teachers and students alike. Last year, 6 years later, I saw a cop show and freaking recognized that classmate in his scooter, and the cops stopped him because the idiot didn't secure his helmet. He was wearing it with loose straps. I know this was filmed on the exam day because my classmate was completely panicking while being filmed and constantly telling the cops my exams are in 10 minutes. I'm gonna be late for my exam. Etc. and the date was around exam time. I wish I had the contact info of the teacher that didn't let him retake the exam so she could see the mistake she made, or the contact info of the classmate to apologize for not believing him. Former student here. Sorry, boss, my stepdad tried to kill us last night and I had to deal with the cops. Professor just looked at me for a moment and said, "Dude, do you want to go grab a drink and talk about this after class?" Man, my English professor was a bro when I was in college. All good now? Yeah. Dude's been dead now about 8 years. He didn't take care of himself, his alcoholism finally caught up with him. I had to pick the pieces up from what he left behind, and in the process learned a lot about who I am and what I can do. It took a few years to get my head on straight and learn that life isn't just one big crisis. Lots of time analyzing my reactions and the events I found myself in. Therapy, psychiatric help, the works. I'm in a much better and healthier place, and that event was about a decade ago. I've blossomed into a weird yet passionate and functional adult, a provider for those that need help, and a mentor and friend. I wish things had been different growing up, but I'm happy with how it turned out despite all the odds. Thank you for asking. What a beautiful response. I'm so glad you are on a good path now. When I was student teaching, I was late because there was bunch chickens in the middle of the road. They wouldn't move at all. This is in the middle of a city of 200,000 people. Freaking chickens. I finally get to school and profusely apologize to my mentor teacher, and I told her why I was late, thinking it sounded ridiculous. She said, "Yeah, those chickens are fucking assholes. They surrounded my car in the McDonald's parking lot last year. Don't worry about. They were protesting the McChicken sandwich. What I want to know is what part of the chicken does the McNugget come from? If it comes from where I think it does, I don't want to eat it." Not teacher, but pupil. I was in a car crash on my way to school. About 5 cars involved because some jerk decided to overtake us since we slowed down coming to a turn. So a trip to the hospital to get checked, and then school 3 hours late. I had small cuts all over my face from glass flying everywhere and had a really sore shoulder, but my teachers wouldn't believe me until police showed up because they forgot to get a statement from me. Apparently some of the other involved people died. AMD, the jerk got 8 years in prison. Hey Mr. Teacher, see, I have my face all cut up because of glass from a car crash. I hope you are okay with that. Nah, you're lying bro, you did that yourself to get an excuse. Pretty much. But the teacher's face when 2 police officers came in the door was priceless. This is like straight out of an 80s movie. What is the meaning of all this? This student right here was in an accident, Mr. Teacher. In high school, I biked to class. One day I hit a rock and ate absolute shit. I obviously got to class late. Before I could say a word, my teacher stopped class and said, "Thank you for finally joining us. Why are you so late?" I raised my heavily bloodied hands and elbows. It must have looked bad because she audibly gasped and rushed me to the school nurse, apologizing non-stop the entire way. Edit, my B, I'm not a teacher. I slipped while cutting my apple up before a soil science lab. It was a medium cut, but there was no makeup lab available for this experiment because it was the first of 3 weeks experiments. Wrapped it up in toilet paper and figured I'd use the first aid kit in the lab to strip it shut, worst case scenario, and disinfect it. It didn't hurt much, but it just wouldn't chill out. It was also winter, so I put gloves on and went to catch the bus, 10-minute ride to the uni. By the time I got to the lab, there was blood everywhere. It was a small but very deep cut. I showed up to lab on time, but my professor took one look at the blood dripping down my arm and said, "I admire you bringing yourself here, but Christ, go to the clinic." My professor started my experiment for me, literally just making mud milkshakes for an hour, and every subsequent lab would ask if I was missing any limbs that morning. I love your professor. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you have a similar story, share it in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more. Have a great day, or night.